Hello, welcome back. Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony. Hope you guys are doing well. It's Friday, May 12th here in San Diego. It's a little May gray, that's what we call it here. May and June are kind of the gloomy months of the year in San Diego. So it's about 10:30 a.m., kind of cloudy gray skies. But it's ironic that we call it May gray because I think this month of May that I want to talk about, we're already about halfway through it, but I've been talking about it since August, September of last year, and it's really a bright month energetically relative to what we've been going through. And it's really the beginning of brightness. So that's also worthy of note as well. So anyway, again, it's Friday, May 12th. I don't know how many of you are experiencing the Scorpio full moon that hit us on Wednesday. And so pretty much the entire work week this week has been colored by that Scorpio full moon. And the Scorpio full moon is in a sextile to Pluto, which is the modern ruler of Scorpio. And so we have this deep intensity energy with the Scorpio full moon. And I want to put it in context relative to the other shifts that have been going on. Because also this week, on Tuesday, we had the shift of the moon's nodes. So the moon's nodes, they're not real physical bodies in space, but they're points of intersection. And so they're points of intersection from the Earth's perspective where the sun and the moon, their axes would cross. And this is why when we have new moons and full moons, when they're near that point, what we call the nodes on either side, we have eclipses. And so you might hear people erroneously refer to a time when, we have a new moon and an eclipse coming up. And that's not really true. You have a new moon that is eclipsed because it's intersecting this what we call the nodes of the moon. Anyway, so what that does is it sets up eclipses about every 6 months or so because the nodes there's a north node and a south node, one side of the zodiac and the other side. And so they split different signs, opposite signs. Since November 2015, that is when the north node slipped into Virgo and the south node with it slipped into Pisces, the opposite sign of Virgo. Okay? And so for about 18 months, we've had that Virgo-Pisces axis. What happened on Tuesday, this is Tuesday the 9th, I think it was, on May 9th, what happened was this retrograded, because the nodes actually retrograde through the zodiac as a given. They sometimes will go direct briefly, but they retrograde, generally speaking. So they went backwards from Virgo back into Leo, the south node from Pisces back into Aquarius. And so now we have this Leo-Aquarius axis activated with the moon's nodes. Why is that significant? Well, that's what I'll talk about here. So this shift of the nodes is a very significant shift in the general energy of kind of where our souls are headed, the direction they're headed, okay, where we're coming from and heading toward. Coming from south node, heading toward north node. And so the last 18 months, coming from Pisces, south node, to Virgo, north node, so from November 2015 right up until this past week, it's kind of been nose to the grindstone energy. It's just north node and Virgo, getting to work, doing the daily things that are achieving our spiritual practice, Pisces south node. So bringing our kind of spiritual awareness into our physical daily lives. And it's been also very karmic. Pisces south node is very karmic. So it's been dealing with karma, purging karma through work. Okay, and that work can vary depending on who we are and what we're doing. But the idea is it's almost like we've had to work harder just to maintain a certain sense of livelihood or sanity. And it's like the never-ending work. It's kind of like Virgo is the energy of like chores, right? They're never done. You can clean as many times as you want, but things will still get dirty. You got to clean again. And so there's constant maintenance, constant going, constant moving. And so the last 18 months have felt like this. And it's just sort of all of our karmic baggage coming up, and we have to work on it, work on the next thing, work on the next thing, work on the next thing, work on the next thing. And it's been tiring, to put it bluntly. It's been very tiring. So the good news, and this is part of the brightness of May, in the beginning here that May brings, is that we have that shift with the north node slipping back into Leo, south node back into Aquarius. And I'm going to get back to that full moon in Scorpio this week and how it relates to this in just a second. And so now what we're doing is, just by feeling into the energy, I feel lighter already. This Leo Aquarius, it's a much more detached energy. It's not as deep and involved as the Virgo Pisces. And Leo energy, where we're headed now, is this very heart-based place. It's very authentic, expressive place. Okay, Leo has to do with creativity and joy and pleasure and expressing ourselves to the fullest. And so what we've been working on the last 18 months, all that work we've been doing, we might not even have known it, but we've kind of really focused our energy now on what our spiritual work is in the world. And now we're ready to express it, right? And so we're coming from now that Aquarian energy, the South Node. And so that's the groups, the tribes, the like-minded people that we've been meeting along the way, and not realizing that we're, going to be, we have this kind of support system, and it's a support system for allowing our full expression to come out. And so now it's like we have an audience, if you want to look at it that way. So we've built an audience in a certain way. And so that is the next 18 months from now, May 2017, right on through about the fall, probably November-ish 2018. I didn't look at the exact shift, but it's going to be around that time in the fall of 2018. This is going to be the theme, is finding opportunities to express, using our network to allow us opportunities to express. That's probably a good phrase to use for our network, is that Aquarian energy, and expression is a Leo energy. And so it's a great opportunity for us to have developed our work over the last 18 months, developed that spiritual work. Now this opportunity to have an audience to express it to. So yay, right? But of course, nothing turns on a dime here, right? And so we have a little bit of a transition. We have a lot of momentum from the last 18 months. It's going to linger for a few months. And we have this new beginning energy that we might even start feeling already. But it's not going to really kick in for another few months. And I'll talk about that kick-in point in a sec too. But I want to get back to full moon in Scorpio. So this week has been pretty intense, to say the least. And it's all about that final purge, okay? The final purge of all that stuff that we need to get out of us in order to align with this new shift in the nodes, in order to align with this new lighter, more fun, more joy-based, heart-based energy. Because all that crap has to go, right? And what has been coming up, and this has been a mix of my experience, what I've been hearing from other people, is, and this all ties back to what I've been talking about in past videos, going back to like late August, and I'll get to that in a second too, because here in the next week or two, we're culminating. Mid to late May is this culmination of what started in late August, okay? And the theme of that is self-love. The theme of this whole period from late August right on until mid to late May is this self-development via learning to love the self no matter what, okay? So we'll get back to that in a second. So we got two things to get back to. But right now, what I want to talk about is what this full moon in Scorpio is doing is purging and clearing the way so that that final culmination of self-love can occur, okay? And so what it has been bringing up, and so this is the ironic twist of it, is that it has been bringing up threats of loss, and it's threats of loss of the things that we specifically, on an ego level, believe we need to have present in our lives in order to be lovable, okay? So I'm going to say that again. So it's the purging that's coming up this week is it's a threat of loss of the things our egos think we need in order to be lovable. And the lesson in it, if we wade through this, if we move through it, if we breathe through it, the only way out is through it, right? So just get through it. We realize that in this development of self-love going back to late August, that's culminating in the next couple weeks, that no matter what happens, no matter what we think we're losing, it doesn't have to change our lovability. And that is really the core foundation of what self-love is that you love yourself no matter what is occurring, right? And so you don't need to have that job to support this thing for you to be lovable. You don't need to be a certain thing for a certain someone in order to be lovable. And that person can be lost, and you might perceive them as losing that person or that situation or that opportunity because you weren't enough of something for them. But if you love yourself through that perceived loss, there is no loss of love, right? So no matter what happens outside of you, no matter how someone reflects their impression of you, if you love yourself, nothing changes. It's always defaulted back to that. And so you become sort of impervious to external scenarios when you're in a state of self-love. And so we've been building this state of self-love, building this ability to be our own fortress, our own sovereign kingdom within since about late August. So I'll just kind of go through this timeline briefly. If you saw my previous videos, you might have heard some of this before. But back in late August, we had a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter in Virgo, along with a conjunction of Mars and Saturn in Sagittarius. Okay, so 2 cycles started. The Mars-Saturn cycle in Sag and a Venus-Jupiter cycle in Virgo. And what we have happening here in mid to late May, May 19th, we'll have Venus opposition of Jupiter. So it was conjunct Jupiter in Virgo. Now it's going to be opposite Jupiter. It'll be in Aries, Jupiter in Libra. So that's the culmination, the full moon phase of that cycle. And we have Mars, which was conjunct Saturn in Sagittarius, now going to be opposing Saturn from Gemini here in late May. I think May 20, right around Memorial Day, I believe, the 28th, 29th. So about 10 days after the Venus-Jupiter culmination. So we have 2 culminations occurring that both started within about a week of each other, ending within about a week, week and a half of each other. Well, not ending, but culminating within a week and a half of each other. So there's a general connection in this theme, this energy of late August to mid to late May, okay? And so what we birthed, or what we started to begin in late August, was how to love ourselves no matter what, no matter what's happening in our lives. You know, we might have stories about what we need to perform at a minimum just to be lovable. And these stories have been challenged since late August. So think back, these last, whatever many months that is, 9 months or something like that. How have we been challenged to allow ourselves to kind of what this full moon in Scorpio is bringing up, the finality of it. If we haven't fully developed the ability to love ourselves no matter what, this Scorpio full moon is pushing us into the darkest of it to say, look, this is sucky, love yourself anyway, right? But there's been a gradual piece by piece aspect since late August. What if this got taken away? What if this was no longer associated with who you are? Are you still lovable, right? And so think of that theme of the last 9 months. How we define ourselves. Our egos want to be have a certain defining quality or essence that we can repeat, right? No, this is how I am, that's not how I am. This is how I am, that's not how I am. And so we've been challenged the last 9 months to have parts of what we think we have to be kind of fall away. It's like, wait, I've always had that. I've always been able to generate that. If I don't do that, am I lovable, right? And it's been this opportunity to choose love for self no matter what, okay? So if anything we haven't gotten out of this theme in the last 9 months, this Scorpio full moon is saying, whoosh, even if you haven't gotten it, you're going to get it all right now. And so the more we've worked on it, the more we've been aware of that the last 9 months, the less intense this full moon has been for us. The less we have been in touch with that, the more intense this full moon is, because it's time, it's the end, it's time to get it out of here, because we're shifting into a new, lighter, open, expressive, coming from a foundation of self-love in order to express our truth to others, right? And we can't do that if we're coming from ego, all right? And so toward the end, tail end of this, in the last couple of months, we've had the Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde, okay? What's interesting is that both Venus and Mercury are now direct, but they're still in the shadow zone. So they're still in the zone of the zodiac where their retrogrades occurred, okay? But they're wrapping up. And they're both exiting their shadows right around the time of that Venus opposite Jupiter on May 19th, which is just a week from now. So the period from May 18th to 20th, next Thursday into Saturday, Venus exits its shadow, opposes Jupiter. Boom. The culmination of that Jupiter-Venus dance that I had a video on back in September, okay? And then also Mercury will end its shadow the next day on the 20th. And then about 8 days later, we have the opposition of Mars and Saturn, going back to late August, again, culminating here. So mid to late May is like we've finished. That's the energy. And we're ready for this new, lighter, flexible, options kind of period. I feel like it feels like things are so loose. June, July into August, there's a sense of possibilities and making decisions and choices and weighing options. And so if we felt like we've been limited as far as our options go, it feels like the sky's opening up, the doors are opening up, and almost in a way that might cause more stress, because now you have to make choices and let some things go, right? But that's the energy that we're entering now. So there's a sense of possibilities opening up. But going back to late August, so we were starting this period of learning how to develop self-love. And you only learn how to develop self-love by having little challenges that pull the things out of your life that you assume you need in order to deserve or earn or be worthy of that love that you're just giving yourself anyway, no matter what, right? And that's the key, is that you can't expect to feel loved by others all the time, but you can always love yourself all the time, okay? You don't have to judge your worthiness to be lovable by others' decisions that are only based on their own internal inconsistencies and incompleteness or perception of incompleteness, right? So I don't know about you, but I've had plenty of opportunities to dive into this stuff over the last 9 months, for sure. But what we really started there with the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in August specifically, that was in Virgo, and it was a sense of birthing this new idea of birthing the expansion of what our work and service is in the world, okay? And so really just getting in touch with that and wrapping ourselves around what my mission is here in the world. And with Mars conjunct Saturn back in late August, there was a real sense of trying to channel and focus our energies on our path toward the future, where we really want to head, not being distracted, but really where we want to head. And so the combination of those two culminating now in mid to late May, only because of all the work we've done in the last 9 months, and especially the Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde, now we're kind of ready to, again, what it's saying is with Venus in Aries opposing Jupiter, it's saying that we're ripe now as a sovereign being in self-love. We're ripe as a sovereign being in self-love. In other words, it's almost like that impenetrable shield has been developed at this point in mid to late May. So we are now in a state of the ability to self-love no matter what. And that opens the door, when we get a few months down the road, to better partnerships, better unions, things like that. Because if you're not in that state where you're impenetrable and that you're able to love yourself no matter what, then you're going to be dependent or codependent on outside opinions, outside perceptions of you and your lovability and your worthiness, right? And so when you build a relationship based on that, which is how most relationships are built, then that codependency, it can suck you in, and it can prevent you from your mission, from your sole purpose, which is what we're also trying to build, right? So we've been simultaneously trying to build this sense of focusing on our work and where we're headed in the future, and that can at first seem like it's going to isolate others and not allow you to have relationships, but really it's forming the foundation upon which to form a real relationship, relationship, okay? That is not based on codependency, but that's based on union between sovereign entities. Two sovereign beings that are self-loved, self-lovable, regardless of each other's opinion or perception of each other in any one moment. That's an extremely strong partnership. That's what sovereign harmony is all about. You're going to create more harmony between yourself and others when you don't need anything from them to have harmony within. And that's what sovereignty is, when you're sovereignly aligned. When you know you're whole, when you know you're lovable no matter what, you're in a state of peace, right? Because there's nothing on the outside that can change that. And when you unite with somebody like that, you can enter depths that you could not have entered before. I mentioned this in another video. This is the idea of, the better your scuba gear is, the deeper you can dive. So when you're more confident in your scuba gear, which is what this fortress is, that sovereign fortress, you can dive deeper than you ever could in a codependent relationship, where you kind of skim the surface because you don't want to lose yourself. You don't really trust that you can maintain yourself, but when you have that strong fortress, you're going to be maintained no matter how deep you go, right? Doesn't matter. And that's going to be more thematic when we get to the fall. But I want to talk about, again, this, at least the last couple of months with the retrogrades, Venus and Mercury retrograde, and going back to this idea of our ego assuming we need certain things in our life, assuming that we need to be a certain way in order to be lovable. And what these last couple retrogrades, especially Venus and Mercury ones, have taught us is if they've been especially difficult for us, then what that's saying is that, if you saw my video on Mercury retrogrades, what they really have to do with is that, there's something about our ego focus that is out of alignment with our soul and our soul's desire. And so the harder the retrogrades are, the more out of alignment we are. Because all the retrogrades are trying to do is realign us with realign our egoic presence in the world with our soul's intentions. And that's all. And so the whole theme of the last 9 months, especially with all the work the last few months, has been establishing the fact that we can get on our own path, our own purpose, stay in our own truth, be choosing self-love in all situations no matter what. And here we are now with an opportunity. If we've done that work, again, while the North Node was in Virgo, we're purging that karma with a lot of work, having to deal with one thing after another that challenges us to say, are you still lovable? Are you still lovable? Are you still lovable? Are you still lovable? And the more we've had our moments where we've said, oh my God, I have to do this now, then I'll be lovable. And then everything will be okay. But the more we did that, the more we realized something else would come. So we're at a place, we've done the work. We're tired of doing the work. And so the Scorpio full moon is clearing out any of the last bits of that to, again, open us up. Okay, so things are, like I said, about to start to get looser. Expect mid to late May as we culminate into this sovereign fortress of self-love. And we culminate also with the Mars opposite Saturn, which is, again, opening up our options for how we're going to get where we want to go. We want to go in a certain direction. We've been aligned with that since late August. We started aligning with it. And now suddenly options are going to start showing themselves to us in the next couple of months. Okay, and we're going to be like, was that the right path to go for what I want to do? Is that the right path? Oh boy, okay. And it's important, but with the development of self-love and sovereignty, we're going to have a much better ability to make those choices and know what is really right for us. What's really right for us. So it may not be the best time to start the unions and partnerships right now because we're still self-developing. Especially through mid to late May, it's that development of self. June and July, we're going to be so distracted, I think. That's kind of the energy I feel because of all the options. And it would be hard to really form contracts with others in certain ways. But there'll be many opportunities, and we might have ideas of who we might want to form certain contracts with, whether it's business, personal, whatever. But not knowing exactly when, how, where, all these, the question marks are unanswered. It's when we get to August, okay, and I briefly alluded to this earlier. August is when this transition zone between the nodes in Virgo Pisces and the nodes in Leo Aquarius now will kind of switch and be more focused on Leo Aquarius alone, leaving the Virgo Pisces working on our karma behind. And this is when we have the eclipses in August. So we have a lunar eclipse August 7th in Aquarius. It'll be right on the south node. And then we have a total solar eclipse August 21st in Leo, in very late Leo. And this is a really, really powerful one, especially in the US. It's going to cross the entire lower 48, which for the first time in, I don't even know, a few decades at least, since the last total solar eclipse that was visible in the US, or over a large chunk of the US. So it's a big deal, and it's going to be a big energy. And what's interesting with that is not only is it going to mark this sort of ending of the Virgo Pisces nodes in total immersion in the Leo Aquarian nodal experience of, again, expression and using our network to share our expressions with others, but it's also reflecting back to here mid to late May, because right now it's kind of in the background of this culmination of Venus opposite Jupiter and Mars opposite Saturn, and Venus and Mercury exiting their shadow periods from the recent retrogrades, and this final purge of the full moon in Scorpio. What also is happening in the background is there's a grand trine in fire signs. So there's 3 fire signs. We have Saturn in Sagittarius trining Uranus in Aries, and they're both trining the North Node freshly now into Leo, in the late degrees of Leo. So in the late degrees of fire signs, there's this grand trine forming, and it's a really, really great energy. And again, it's in the background here in May, so it's like we're culminating into the ability to dive into our creations here in May by being sovereign and opening up the possibilities for how we're going to get to where we want to go. That's the theme of May. And when we get to August, when we have that solar eclipse right on that North Node, trining Saturn, trining Uranus, boom. This is basically like diving fully within our hearts toward our futures in the most authentic way possible. And it looks like a ball of fire, like a boom, now I know. And so what we get here in June and July as far as options, we're going to be making decisions, again, using our newfound sense of self-love. And when we get to August, there's a sense of like the train almost moving before we're ready for it to move, and we're moving with it, okay? And as long as we follow the full reaches of our hearts, the more that we're going to create according to our soul's intentions, okay? There's also a Mercury retrograde. That's the next Mercury retrograde is at that time as well. So August is a very major shift period. Immediately following that, and I'll have another video to remind you of this, what's coming up in August and whatnot coming up, but I just want to give you the preview. But after that, Jupiter's going to be finishing up its tour of Libra as we head into early October, suggesting that we've expanded our ability to relate to others in a more equal and balanced way. And that more equal and balanced way is because of the achievement of sovereignty, the achievement of knowing who we are and that we're lovable no matter what happens. That's why, when Jupiter's finishing up Libra at that time, we're basically starting to form our partnerships. So September, October time frame is when these new sovereign selves with great scuba gear can now create contracts and partnerships on a business level, on a personal level, whatever it is, that can really take our creations beyond where they could be on our own, okay? And when Jupiter enters Scorpio in October, that's when this really great scuba gear gets tested, because now we're gonna dive deep, we're gonna merge in ways that would scare the shit out of us if we didn't have a sense of sovereignty and boundaries, in the sense that we will never lose ourselves, we'll never lose our love for ourselves no matter what happens. Because if we're not in that space, diving deep like that, again, is just not an option. Okay, so the more sovereignly developed we are and our gear is good, we're just going to say, I'm going to love myself no matter what. I'm not falling apart. I'm going to maintain myself. So let's dive on deep, and however that looks. Again, that's in the future. But when you think about it, it's an adventure, right? I mean, you always think of adventures as outward experiences. And the reality, and that's what this energy of this grand fire trine is, a sense of adventure by diving deep within. Adventure of an inward adventure, okay? When you're fully in your heart, fully following that, there's no more example of courage than following that no matter what. And that involves also going as deep as you can. Because on a soul level, that's all we're really trying to do. We're trying to grow on a soul level. And you don't grow on a soul level going outward. You grow on a soul level going inward. And so the more you adventure inward, the more your soul is happy. The more you adventure outward, the more the ego is happy, right? And that's because the ego gets away from, it pushes away the soul's yearnings, pushes away what the heart wants, and it's just easier, right? The more we go out there, out there, out there. You can kind of think of the analogy like the idea that, we've explored probably more of space, and at least in our local zone of space, than some of the depths of our oceans on Earth. We went to the moon, if you believe we went to the moon in 1969. I'm not going to comment one way or the other, but if we went to the moon in 1969, then we did that before we knew a lot about the realities of the depths of our oceans, right? And so this is again an egoic expression to go outward before you've actually gone inward. But this period from late August right up until mid to late May has been our opportunity to realize that we are lovable no matter what. It's because we are the ones that are choosing the love no matter what. that's the way to sum it up. And because of that, we're able to be in a more sovereign, contained, very great space with great scuba gear, where once we weigh our options here this summer, and we experience the full magnitude of our hearts here in late summer into the fall, we'll be able to merge with others in a way that we couldn't before, and in a way that we can dive deeper than ever before and not lose ourselves whatsoever. That's kind of cool, actually. So, and this has to do with one-on-one partnerships, but also collective partnerships. So I see reflected in this sense of like community development and things like that, but also personal unions that are strategic because they might be aligned on the same purpose. If you know what your purpose is, and that's what we've been developing, knowing what direction we're headed, the right people at the right time are just going to be, hey, right next to you, heading where you're heading, right? And so instead of trying to focus on finding somebody, it's just, again, focus on the self, focus on the self-love. And if someone else is doing that too, it's just going to end up in the seat next to you on the train heading where you're headed, right? If that's an analogy. Maybe that's literal for some people's experience, but it's an analogy that we realize that, oh, we're on the same path as someone, we're heading the same direction, and I don't have to lose myself in connecting with this person. So this is all stuff coming up. If you get back to now, again, just recognize that May, things are opening up. We're opening up, we're transitioning to this new energy that you can already start to feel. So don't let the energy of this week with the full moon in Scorpio derail you, because it is a temporary final purge of what's been going on the last 9 months, of just getting that stuff out, giving you an opportunity to say, are you still lovable? This just happened. Are you still lovable? Okay, as long as you can say yes and choose that, whatever issues that come up that seem dire, that seem like they're losses, all of a sudden they shift and they just transform into something else. And you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. And I had that experience just the last couple of days. I was fearing the worst about something, and then all of a sudden, it was different than my ego wanted it to be, but it shifted into something that's workable as well. And so I was like, oh, okay. And the reason is because I literally in the moment said, whatever happens, it's fine. And I was basically saying, there's self-love no matter what. I haven't failed at anything. I haven't done anything wrong, whatnot. And so that was my experience. And I can feel that energy kind of fading now. It's like I passed the test or something. And so you might be feeling that as well, okay? But just know the next couple of weeks, just know that we're coming into this culmination of self-love and focused direction on where we're headed. And if we have that set, by the time we exit May, then we'll be able to navigate the opportunities and options that are coming our way in June and July. And when our heart's fully open here in August, we're not going to fear the repercussions of that. We're not going to fear the repercussions of going our own way, and going our own way in union with perhaps one or more partners in a business situation, and diving deep into that, or a one-on-one partnership, or a combination of both. This idea that we're taking risks with our hearts, that's what we need to be doing. And you could take better risks with your hearts, have more courage, in other words, to go on that adventure, that inward adventure, that one, the soul's adventures are much more valuable when they're inward. Having the courage to take the inward adventure from that open heart space, knowing that our scuba gear is wonderful and it's going to take care of us, and that no matter what happens in the situation, guess what? We can still choose to love ourselves. We can dive deep, 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 deep. And that will take us from the fall into 2018. Anyway, so thank you for joining me. Hope that sinks in. I always feel like I'm rambling, and I never know if I have any coherence in what's happening in what I say. But I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your feedback. Over the next couple of weeks, I want to do a special here. So I don't usually do this via the YouTube, but I am going to be taking off here in late May, and I might be unavailable for readings and things for at least a week, or maybe up to like 3 weeks potentially. And so between now, today's May 12th, and May 24th, which is, I believe, a Wednesday, so yeah, a week from Wednesday, so you got about 12 days. If we could schedule by phone or by Skype or in person if you're in San Diego. But if you're interested in scheduling your first reading with me or a follow-up reading with me on what's going on with these energies and how it affects your chart specifically, I'm doing a very brief deal, but $60, full reading, everything included. So if you haven't done it yet, this is going to be the absolute lowest it will be offered at. I usually do it for about $150, and my relationship readings are a little bit more than that, but $60, that's it. So big time deal if you want to schedule, but again, I won't be available the 25th or after for a while, so we'll have to schedule it. If we can schedule it by May 24th, we can work with it at that rate. So that will be put out there for you or anybody that you know. If you haven't dived into this yet and want to explore it, contact me. You can contact me through sovereignharmony.com. Information will be down below the YouTube. Go ahead and do that. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful. We're coming out of what has been a rough time. That's really also another way to look at this. Just breathe, move through it, and things are really opening up as we move through the next few months. And getting exciting, getting really joy-filled, enjoyable in a lot of ways. So stay focused, love yourself no matter what, get through this purge, and it's all going to be good. All right? Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.